Good day, everyone. It's Dan Raker from Connect Press on behalf of the Connect Press communities, especially Creo community and PLM Connections. I want to welcome you to today's webinar, What's New in PTC Creo 3.0. 3.0 has a tremendous number of new features, many of which are real time savers, productivity tools for folks who are working in the Creo environment every day. And in addition, there's just some wonderful new technologies and improvements that allow better interoperability and much more. So I'm really looking forward to today's webinar. Today's webinar is brought to you by Barry-Wehmiller International Resources, and shortly I will introduce Ben and his associate Beth, who will lead us through the content of the webinar. First, just a little bit of housekeeping. The webinar is being recorded in its entirety, so you can go back later and view the slides and view some of the demonstrations at your leisure. Also, you can share with your colleagues, and of course, for those of you who were not able to make it in this time zone at this moment, you can look at the View on Demand webinar when you please. Later today, or at the latest first thing tomorrow morning, I will send around to everybody on the registration list copies of links to view the webinar on demand in Creo Community or PLM Connections, and you'll be able to pick it up from there. We will do questions and answers at the end of the session. The format is some intro and demonstrations, and then we'll leave about 10 minutes for Q&A at the end of the hour and try to get everybody out of here by the top of the hour again. If we have more questions than we can handle, we'll see if we can get Ben and Beth to perhaps type up some of the answers to the more popular questions, and we will post those along with the recorded webinar in the online communities as soon as possible. Without much further ado, I'd like to introduce Beth Kessler and Ben Givehand from Barry-Wehmiller. Hello, folks. Are you with us?
Yes, this is Beth. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Beth. Hi, Ben. How are you today?
Hello, sir. How are you?
Great. So I'll turn things over to you. I'll be in background mode to help run some polls and do Q&A with you later. Call on me if you need something, but otherwise, over to you.
Sounds great. Thank you, Dan. I want to welcome everyone today. Thank you for joining us for today's Barry-Wehmiller International Resources webinar. This is our PTC webcast series, and today we'll be demoing Creo 3.0. We'll be covering the latest enhancements of its breakthrough multi-CAD technology, its concept design improvements, and much more. Next slide, Ben. Today's presenters, my name's Bethany Kessler. I'll be moderating today, and I'm the marketing coordinator for BWIR. And then we will have Ben Givehand. He's our speaker, and he will be doing the demo and showing you the latest features of Creo 3.0. Next slide. So here's a brief agenda. We're going to do a brief BWIR intro, let you know who we are and how we help manufacturers as a total solutions provider, along with 2 short poll questions. Then we'll jump right into the Creo 3.0 presentation covering these topics. And then we'll finally wrap it up with a Q&A. Next slide. Barry-Wehmiller International Resources is the global engineering and enterprise consulting group of Barry-Wehmiller, which is a U.S.-based manufacturing company. We have operations worldwide, and we're going on 130 years of business and approaching $2 billion in annual revenue. Our division, Barry-Wehmiller International Resources, we're the consulting group, and we help manufacturers solve business, engineering, and IT challenges. So anything that's going to impact your growth, cost, and risk, and has to do with product development, we have end-to-end solutions for you. Next slide, please. Again, leveraging our 129-year manufacturing legacy, we provide manufacturers end-to-end solutions with these core capabilities. Specifically in PTC and PLM, we also provide engineering services such as machine design and mechanical engineering, and all the way to enterprise solutions, including ERP, your CRM, EAM, and so on. For our Product Development Solutions group, we offer the entire PTC product suite along with PLM consulting and services from global deployment to upgrades and customization. A few other things about us. We were selected as one of the fastest growing PTC partners in the North American channel in 2013, and we're also certified as a Windchill preferred partner with PTC. BWIR is your total solutions provider for engineering and enterprise. Next slide, Ben. BWIR serves some of the world's largest manufacturers, along with some small to mid-sized manufacturers as well, and we're aimed at providing total solutions to their engineering and enterprise needs. We hope to work with you as well as your total solutions provider, and I'm now going to turn the webcast over to Ben, who will get right into the presentation. Ben? Before we do that, we're going to do poll questions, Dan.
There we go. All right. Dan, you'd like to go ahead and run that for us, please?
Yes. Folks, take a moment. Please go to your screen and just give us a quick vote. Wildfire 4, 5, or Creo 2.0. What are you using right now? Pick the one that is most applicable to you. We'll vote for 30 seconds or so and then share the results with everybody so we can see who's on the line and what they're up to right now. We'll give you a couple more questions. Most folks have already voted. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to cut it off. Last chance to vote. Okay. Closing this poll. Put up the results. Okay, Beth, Ben. Well, good. Creo 2.0 is already up there over 70%. What do you think?
Very good. That's a good thing. I can't see the rest of the polls. How many did we? Do we have any Wildfire 4 still out there?
Yeah. So Creo, you're not seeing that show up on your screen. Oh yeah, you're a presenter. So Creo 2.0 showed up with 72%, Wildfire 5 at 15%, Wildfire 4 at 13%.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to hide that one. Should we go right on to the next poll?
Sure.
Okay. Here's the next one. What are you using for a product data management tool? Please select one. Intralink, Windchill PDM Essentials, Windchill PDM Link, some other tool, or none currently. So again, as quickly as you can, let us know what you're doing and thinking, and we can share the results with everyone on the screen, and that'll inform some of the rest of the presentation. Most folks have already voted. Going to cut it off in a moment or so. Last call. Okay, so the results on this one, Intralink 11%, PDM Essentials 1, Windchill PDM Link 37%, other 15%, and none currently at 36%. So there's a lot of opportunity there for folks to be using some data management tools. Any comments there before I turn it back over to you?
That usually runs about even with the some of our webcasts we've done, so that sounds about right, and that's right. Good chance for opportunity. So.
Great. Okay, I'll hide that and turn things back over to you, Ben. Call on me if you need me.
All right. Very good. All right, so I'm going to go back here to the agenda very quick, and just to kind of give everybody a brief introduction of what we're going to be doing here today. Talk about general UI enhancements, some part stuff. There have been some UI enhancements and some things that you can and can't do, and we'll talk about that. We'll go through essentially the core stuff, again, parts, assemblies, and drawings, and then what we'll focus on towards the end is essentially two of the major kind of releases or new add-ons that PTC has. One of them is free that comes along with it, and then there are two add-ons that I believe, sorry about that, guys, that are pay. So we'll cover what is now the new fastener module, or whatever you'd like to call it, the intelligent fastener portion of the software, and then now what is also called the design exploration extension. So new things from PTC. They're actually pretty cool. Show you some different things around there, and we'll go from there. Now, for those of you that do know this, and for those of you that maybe haven't been paying as close attention, actual Creo 3 was pushed back for a release date and still is not out. And because of that, to be honest with you, it's been a little bit difficult finding a lot of information around what's new. documentation capabilities. And so here in the last week, I've been kind of racking my brain and pulling models and doing different things to kind of show this in a nice, simple way so everybody kind of sees what we have going on. So I don't know if PTC, at least the last time I've heard, PTC has not given a new release date for Creo 3. But right now, I'm actually running, or have been running, a beta version of this. All right. So, but you guys will see it here, and we'll go from there. So, new colors, right? New colors, woohoo! New colors, blue and gray are new colors. And in turn, if you once we get fired up here, you will actually see new coloring schemes within the software. Okay. Also, one thing that I found is when we launched Creo 3, you will see our Welcome to Creo. It's like a separate little web page. For those of you that don't like this, I'm sure you can turn this off. But it's kind of nice that you see tutorials. A lot of times you had to dig for some of that stuff in past, and it launches right along with now the software, Help Center, Global Support. It takes you right to PTC.com, and then more tutorials, and then the What's New page. So this is actually just a web page that fires right on top. There it is, right? And you can close it down, and I'm pretty sure there's a setting that you can set that will knock that down for you. Okay? So we're going to start out just very simply. We're just going to open a few parts and then go from there. It'll kind of introduce some different interface type stuff, and we'll work from that point. We'll open one more. All right. So obviously you notice right away that there's a coloring change, okay? And for those of you that are still on Wildfire 4 and Wildfire 5, if you've seen some of the new Creo 2, where the Creo 2 interface, fundamentally the interface hasn't changed except for in Creo 3, it's now, again, blue and a little bit more bluish color. And we'll talk something here in just a little bit that has changed. But for those of you that are using Wildfire 4 and Wildfire 5, if you've seen some of the older, or I shouldn't say older, but some of the previous interface enhancements around being able to customize interface and the ribbon, none of that fundamentally has changed. So you still can right-click, go through Customize Ribbon, and do all the same things, okay? What you can do now, though, is that if you notice this, and this is where this has changed, and I think this has been something that's been called on from PTC for a while, but if I pick this hole here and I right-click, right mouse buttons, okay, you now have the ability not to add in or take away, which would be nice, but you have the ability to eliminate and also reorder what you do or do not see essentially out of the box from PTC now. So you can't add in a button, right, which again would be nice, but you can now reorder, remove things, put things in different spots, right? And it really is pretty much the same as what you see as far as customizing the interface. So if I go up to Customizing the Ribbon, you will now see a shortcut menu button, okay? From here, essentially, you see different selection concepts, right? Parts, features, geometry, datums, those type of ideas. So if I come over and say features, right? From here, what you will see is what becomes the primary, object command, secondary, and essentially, and I can't do this with this is up, I have to sort of switch back and forth, but if I come over here and pick the whole, it's kind of divided into these different areas, right? So for instance, I have an information button, and most of us want to see the information button, but let's just say we want to get rid of it. So essentially, the different little lines represent the areas. I can come over here to Customizing the Ribbon, go to my shortcut menu, go to Features, and then if I start to expand this, what you'll see is here's Suppress, right? There's the Suppress function. You see your Edit Actions button. Here's the Edit Dimensions. And then if you come down here, and I think this one, maybe it's in Properties. There it is. Okay, so in Properties, if I decide to uncheck that one, now when I say OK, when I go in, pick that guy, we'll see Not See, or essentially the information button has been taken away. So it's just as easy like before in Creo 2 where you can customize some of this stuff, and now you have the ability to go in and essentially add, or I shouldn't say add, but essentially hide or unhide, or in this case also reorder, right? If I wanted this guy to be up here, I can reorder and move some things around also and do that. So right mouse buttons now have changed essentially from a standpoint of reordering, prioritizing, and adding, and essentially hiding and taking things away. But that's about it that you can do with your right mouse buttons. All right. Okay. Other little things that you have here. Okay. Is now when you come down to the bottom of your screen, you can switch back and forth without saying activate. Woohoo! Right. So you don't always have to come down here to do it. Now you can switch back and forth. You don't have to hit Control A, or you don't have to, hit the activate button. It's kind of nice to be able to do that. So yeah, you can still run it out of the window, drop down, but now they've made it so you can just flip back and forth, nice and easy in that way. Okay. The other thing, and I should have went through this right before I got to the window switch, but the other thing that's a little bit interesting is that, and I haven't seen much on this, but let's minimize guys here real quick, is that there is now something called, and I haven't seen much documentation, so I can't talk too much about this, but there is now the PTC Creo UI editor. And in my opinion, and again, I don't know much about it and I haven't heard much about it, it seems like this is going to be something where you literally probably can create an entire UI that's specific. Now, whether it's for part mode and assembly mode and drawings, we will see. Again, documentation isn't out on it yet, but this actually installs as its own icon. It goes out onto your desktop, and the only reason I won't fire it up now is it actually uses a license of Creo, and I only have one on my machine. But there's now this UI editor, and again, going along with the right mouse button concept, you can kind of dig into that, and hopefully here in the next month or next few weeks we'll have a little bit more information about that guy. Okay. All right. So other non-geometry enhancements. Now, if you come in and go down to the file and go to your options, one thing that you see is it's quite a bit different. I shouldn't say quite a bit different, but there are more options that you have now in your options. Some of them are specific and make sense, right? There's now ECAD settings that you'll find in your options. There's something called board settings, which again I haven't got into just yet. We'll talk about that as we know more about it. Also, the other two things besides the shortcut menus that we just went through, update control and notification center, and we'll get into this a little bit more as we go on. But a lot of it has to deal with what's in the assemblies now. There's something now called the notification center, and if you get into the notification center, you can tell it what you want to notify, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But you can configure that, and then update control also have to do a notification center, and then some automatic updating between references that you have, right? So new things within the options, 3 or 4 new areas that you have within the Creo parametric options drop down, and then again, just a little bit about that that you'll be able to explore and get through, okay? All right, only other thing that we'll kind of investigate this way, for those of you that are not on data management systems for years and years and years and years and years, PTC or ProE always, whenever you hit the save button, always saved another iteration, all right, .1, .2, .3, .4. Now, when there is a config option, and I'll quickly find this. There is now something called File Save Iterations, which if it is on, you will get your iterations. It is off. It now overwrites, so you don't get the .1, .2, .3, .4 anymore. It just overwrites. And I know some of us might be interested in that. Some of us like the dot numbers, but as everybody knows, it can be fairly challenging, essentially memory-wise, right, hard disk space-wise when it comes to some of that. So if you like it, there's a config option, easy config option that you can throw in and change a little bit about that. All right. Okay, so now let's get into a little bit of functionality-wise. Okay, here's this now. You'll be able to pick a surface and be able to say, put it normal to the screen. For those of you that know where that comes from, I will not speak that name, but it is now you have the ability to pick a surface and say point it, pick a surface and say point it normal to the screen. And so again, not always just twisting stuff around and using your front left, top right views. You essentially can just pick a surface now and say put it normal to a view. And again, that's just the button that comes out of your in-graphics toolbar. Okay. All right. So other small enhancements that we have, I'll just simply create a hole here. There's my hole. So a few things here. One is that now there is a dedicated Edit References dialog box. So when I pick a hole, right-click, you will now see Edit References right here. But now has its own dedicated dialog box, and then simply replacing references can be as simple as picking this guy right here. Right here's my surface. But what we'll do is we'll say, you know what, I actually want to attach it onto there, and then I want this guy to attach onto there. We'll say OK. Right, so Edit References now has its own dialog box. Edit References tended to be a function that most people didn't use because you could get away with Edit Definition, but now Edit References has been updated, makes it a little bit easier to deal with that. Also, if I come in and if I delete this pattern, we know that this hole is related to our pattern objects. So if I go in and say, you know what, I want to delete all of this, we'll make sure that our hole exists because I'd like to show something around that. There it is. So now, when you come in here and you go to your information button and you hit Reference Viewer, previously you'd always be able to see the missing reference. But what was difficult is it didn't necessarily tell you, especially the missing reference. So now, when you have something like this and you go to your information button and you have a failure, notice how, if you see over here on the screen, notice how it still displays or highlights the references that it was to. And that's kind of nice because before, you never knew what it was attached to. You just knew it was missing something. You had to edit the definition of it. Then you kind of saw some stuff and maybe some locations. So now it at least displays what you were attached to before. And again, a little bit easier to deal with. Okay. Let's back up. There we are. All right. Other little things, other little enhancements that we'll go through. Let's delete that guy. So we have a pattern right here. There's our pattern. My original pattern member is that guy right there. And in previous versions of the software, essentially in terms of a reference pattern, when you went to apply some type of feature, you had to put it on the original member just for the reference pattern to work. Well, that's changed now. So now I can come in and hit the round button. You know, this was our original pattern member. Let's cut down size just a little bit, make sure it works. There we are. So now when I have my round, if I hit the pattern, notice how, hey, there it is. We'll go ahead and reference pattern. So now you don't have to, it doesn't force you to put rounds on that original pattern member. You can put it on anyone and it still recognizes that pattern, which again is nice instead of having to hunt down the original pattern member, especially for large patterns, and it makes it a little bit easier to deal with. Okay? All right, let's go to guy right here. Few more just kind of core part modeling type things. Now, when you apply draft, you have the ability to apply more than 30 degrees of draft. That's quite a bit of a change. For whatever reason, for a number of years, you've only been able to apply 30 degrees in draft, and now you can apply 89.9 degrees of draft. I'm sure there's a reason why you can't apply 90, but hey, who knows, okay? So there it is, back and forth, and you can see I can drag it. All right, so we are past the 30-degree threshold that's what was always out there for us. All right, last little thing here that I'll show as far as part stuff, and I can do this a little bit before I'm familiar with this model, is that when I come in and go ahead and pick, let's just say, let's drag this hole around. Before, you can come in, when you want to do a reorder, you want to drag things around, you can still do that. But now there's actually a dedicated reorder interface where if I pick the hole, if I had dependent features, it would select dependent features also. I now have the ability to say before and after. So it's kind of like a little bit of a collection device now where you can pick some things, it'll collect some dependencies for you, and then you can go in and be a little bit more specific about where it goes besides just dragging and dropping objects around within the reorder. So a dedicated interface when it comes to that, but essentially just an easier way to do some reordering or a little bit more logical way to do some reordering within the model tree that you have. All right, so part enhancements, again, there's plenty other ones, but within the time constraints, we can't get into too many more of them. We'll go ahead and create a drawing of this. I'll show you 2 quick drawing enhancements. Again, there's a few other ones, but we'll dig into 2 that's a little bit more relevant. Just create a drawing with a format. I'll quickly throw in a general view. There we are. Put in one more view, something about like that. We'll put in another little projection view. Go and turn off our shading. Okay, so now when you create dimensions, again, these are not model dimensions, you know, everybody knows those just show up. But when you create a dimension now, notice how when I pick, it immediately starts to drag a dimension. If I want to change this from a radius to diameter, if I right-click and hold, you will now see diameter, and again, as you drag, I still have to middle-click to drop that guy, but it immediately shows and starts to apply a dimension. Now, in this case, let's look at it this way. If I wanted to create a dimension from here to here, if I pick, it immediately creates a dimension on this overall, right? Well, what I have to do is hold the control button. You kind of see it's kind of buried underneath. It's a little hard to see, but if I left-click there, now I will get that guy, okay? So by default, as soon as you pick something, you're going to get a dimension immediately if you're creating your own manual dimensions. At that point in time, you use the control button and right-click buttons to toggle back and forth between different types of dimensions and add in for other dimension, you know, values, distances, whatever it may be, okay? So a little bit of different dimensioning scheme by default out of the box. And then the other thing that I was going to show here is now notes no longer are in the menu manager. Yay. Okay, so menu manager has gone away for notes. You will see pretty simply, you have note leader. You just have a button. Come over here and drag it. There it is. Drop that guy with middle click. Right, come in, type some information. There we are. Now, the other thing that I found interesting, you can go and configure this in fonts and symbols, but this little insert field. Now, I hit the drop down, and what it gives you is the same informational calls like you would see in formats or also possibly within tables. Well, in doing that, I want to know, hey, if this is automatic here, how do the interface of the repeat regions change at all? And the answer is no. Okay, so essentially, again, insert field for notes, they do that so you can put in quick things within formats, right? But all that has stayed the same for some of your information inputs in the repeat regions. But here you are, again, you can put in sheet name, things that you would regularly see on a format within your notes, all right? So out of the insert field drop down within notes, nice new, make it a little bit easier so you don't have to remember all those types, typing all that information that you have in the past, okay? So just a few things that I wanted to show in drawings. Again, there's a number of more, but just some of the ones that I noticed right away. All right, we are done with these two guys. Let's get rid of that one and that one. Okay, so we'll go through one assembly change, and you'll see this right away. What you'll see now is something called the Notification Center. And what the Notification Center does is that depending on what you have told that you want to be notified of, okay, so before, if you, like it says here, right, outdated PM stuff, if component has failed, if there's a reference, like it says, it's not in session, regeneration failure, missing model type things, you could see it. Sometimes it would show up down here. You would get a failure, so you would know it. But now what PTC has done is put into the assemblies is something called the Notification Center. And essentially all of the notifications or essentially violations of those notifications that you have, it will say, and that's a little hard to see here, but it says I have 4 notifications that I need to check out. And if I open this guy up, it says, hey, I have 3 regeneration failures, and I also have an outdated component, okay? So from here, you can do a number of different things, right? If I wanted to, you actually could fix the location, so you wouldn't actually literally have to go into the part itself. You can hit the Fix button. You can locate objects within the model tree if you had a very large model tree. So the Notification Center tells you everything as a group, what's going on for some of the issues that you're asking to be notified on, but also allows you to do some simple functions, and in this case with one that's kind of nice, say, hey, I want to fix the location of a specific component, and that's nice because you don't have to do edit definition or right-click on it and do those type of things, especially when you have assembly failures. So the Notification Center, again, it runs out of the options drop-down, what you do want to be notified, and again, I haven't even had a chance to plug this into Windchill yet, our Windchill servers, so I haven't seen exactly what the notifications are when we're outdated with Windchill PDM Link or whatever you may be using at this time, okay? So just some assembly functionality, and again, Notification Center. There are a few other ones, but this is one that you can see right away, and it does have some good use in it. Okay, so there are essentially some core differences that you see right away, and again, I haven't even got into probably 75% of them, but just some core things. And then the other thing that we are going to talk about today here is two new kind of the big bangs, essentially, that came from PTC. Okay, so one of them here, hopefully I can get through this, right, is now the Intelligent Fastener extension. Okay, and so for those of you that assemble a lot of bolts and nuts and washers, now PTC has put in essentially two versions of this, and we'll talk about the differences here in just a second, something called a light and a full, of essentially an automated fastener. Not only does it put in bolts, nuts, and washers and standards around ISO and ASME type standards, but also will put in holes and clearance holes and dowel pin holes automatically in your parts. Okay, so you can see this, and the reason I'll show this is that if you go back to the webcast, you'll be able to look at these slides and hold on to them, but I'll kind of go through them. But again, what it does is that you essentially, in a very simple sense of the word, we'll see this here in just a second, you pick an axis, or you pick a hole that, even if you have a hole that already exists, but an axis, you pick a starting surface, where's my mouse, a starting surface, an underneath surface, and it actually will calculate lengths. And then depending if you do have a hole, it will actually calculate hole size based off of that hole. Okay. Now, few things here, and we won't get too much into it. Okay. Notice how it says creates hardware holes at the part level. And then it says no assembly references, which is good, but one thing you have to be aware of is that there is and if you look at this, a full version and a light version. In the light version that's free, there's not as much capability, and then in the full version that you pay for, there's quite a bit more. Okay, so here it is again. I'll leave this up here, won't talk about it too much so we can keep moving on, but I'll show these so you can take a pause on our webcast a little bit later on. But again, light capabilities, full capabilities, and again, we'll show this here in just a second and what the capabilities are of it. All right? Okay. All right, now let's show this. So I have just a very generic valve assembly that I have. Let's turn on our shading so we can see this. And see here is I have holes that currently exist. Now, does the hole have to be in a pattern? No, but after I kind of played around with this for a little bit, I did find out some things about behavior, and we'll talk about it here in just a second. But I have a hole pattern that's in this valve part. I have an end cap that obviously doesn't have any holes in it. But if I go up to my tools, what you'll see now is the Intelligent Fastener dialog box, whatever you'd like to call it, right? Subgroup this might have. So I'm going to come in and say, I want to create a screw. It'll say, what do you want to pick, right? Where do you want to put this at? We'll just go ahead and pick an axis. There it is. And then all I'm going to do now is pick. This is where I want it to start. This is where I want it to end at. There we are. I hit the OK button. And what it does, it starts to make assumptions, okay? So its guess for this hole, and if I hit the little preview button here, is that guy right there, right? Now, obviously, that's a little bit wrong for size-wise, but what we'll do here is I'll come in and say, I want to turn it into an inch. There it is. There's a little bit more appropriate, right, because I'm actually in inches. There it is. And then also you can see that here's its guess by depth. But if you come over here and hit this guy, this little button right here, what it does is configure length automatically. And then from there, here are my standard bolts that you have, okay? So if I wanted to, I can change this into a countersunk bolt. You can see the geometry change. And then even though I'm using a countersunk bolt, you wouldn't necessarily use washers. I can add, at this point in time, go in and add washers, right? So I have picks and clicks. You see how it blanked it out. I can add in washers. And then also, if you kind of drag this over here, you will also see details around the hole, right? Close fit hole, free fit hole, counterbore size, and then again, the end result, without changing too much of this, is when I hit the OK button, is that it says, hey, I'm recognizing that I am in a pattern. I'm recognizing that I'm in a pattern. Do you want to pattern it, or do you want to assemble on the individual instance? If I say pattern, there it is. We'll say OK. And then now I have not only all of my bolts, you can see the pattern of those objects right there. You see all of the actual components themselves. And then if we open up if we open up this guy, you actually see the hole that it put here. Now, also in playing with this, kind of to finish this up, and I won't show an example of this, and kind of doing some different things and testing it out and see how it behaves, what I found is that if you have a pattern of holes first, if you're wanting to apply to a pattern, it's much better if the hole pattern exists beforehand, if you're trying to create like this, where you have a hole through our little orangish brownish part right here also. Because what I found is if I have just a single hole, right, just a single hole, put it through, it'll create that first hole through my secondary part right here. Once I pattern my holes in the individual valve part that we have right here, right, I can go back in and then say reference, pick the bolts and say reference, and it'll pattern it. But it doesn't automatically create in this guy the holes, the clearance holes through it. So the clearance holes come through the operation during that first time, and then it recognizes the pattern, and I found it works a little bit better. Not that you can't do that, but you have to do a few more steps to apply all of those type of things. So just a little bit around functionality differences, and I found that if you get that pattern in there first, it makes it much easier and applies a lot better. Obviously, if you're doing it for a pattern of holes, that obviously changes if you're doing it for just standard holes that are randomly placed. Okay, so intelligent fastener extension, again, free version and a paid version. There's customization within the paid version. You can add more screws, custom bolts, holes, and the whole nine. And for a lot of us out there, that we have customers that created a massive UDF library to do all of this stuff for them. So hopefully this will provide some relief that those of you that haven't put that much time into something like that, and it'll make it a little bit easier for you for assembling fasteners type stuff. Okay, so intelligent fastener design. All right. Okay, so got about 7, 8, 10 minutes. I'll push through this one and we'll go from there. But the last thing that I wanted to show is one that I think has some potential. I'd like to see a little bit more information on it, but it seemed kind of interesting as I was going through it, and kind of capabilities, especially within the context of wind chill. There's some slides out there, but I'd like to see it work. Is what is now called the design exploration extension. Okay, and essentially what the design exploration extension allows you to do is that all of us know that in parametric software is creating playful versions. Hey, I want to drop this on the assembly and drop that on the assembly, can be a challenge at times. It doesn't make a difference what software you're using, right? You can go in and create all these parametric ties, but then you want to replace something. Depending on all this stuff that you've done, it can become painful. And so what PTC did was created, and you'll see this here, a way that you can go in and put in different types or create different scenarios on assemblies, and then come back to them, save them, add different things to them, and then at that point in time, save that out, put it into Windchill as different versions, or within just in the Creo sessions that you have. So it allows you, just like it says, to explore different design ideas without having some of those painful parent-child relationships that we're all used to. Not that they're not there, but you'll see this here in just a second what I'm talking about. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up the standard PTC demo of this, and then what we'll do is I'll show it quickly, but then we'll kind of create our own so you guys can kind of see it in practical use. So what I have here is I have an assembly with a lot of parts in it, but what I'm going to do here is this design exploration extension, once you create it, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just a second, it actually creates what is called a .tmz file that can be stored within Windchill. But I'm going to open this guy directly, okay? And so it is a native file to PTC. Here it is. We'll get it open here in just a second. And what it opens up, excuse me, once we get going, is that it has this guy right here, which essentially is initiated from managed session and design exploration. So I just open it up natively. You can go in and actually start it from here, okay? And so what you're looking at here is a way that as you go in and as you design and assemble objects, is that I can essentially take, and for those of you that are familiar with this term, snapshots, okay? So all I'm doing is, as I'm assembling or as I'm creating things, I'm taking snapshots at that point in time. They're called checkpoints. And I'll come in, and all I'm going to do is run through these checkpoints. So there they are, until the end, where this is the final result of what we had. Okay, this is what was our end result. But in the meantime, back up here at some other point in time, I know that I wanted to replace all of my wheels and bottom structure with two different, different styles. Notice the numbering that you have over here on the left. See how you can come in, or see how it goes all the way up to 30? But now what I did was, I'm going to come back, and literally all you do is you right-click, and if you activate this, it takes us back in time. And then what we did was, all I did was assemble different parts. And if you look at this, if I activate, essentially what I'm doing is, at that point in time within the model tree, right, kind of like just regular in the model tree, I'm going back and adding in other files, right? But I'm not modifying essentially the original part file, or the original assembly file. So you actually can see this guy right here, right? If I activate this one, you see the model tree update with different, with different components, and then off of this portion of it. So essentially, off of this branch, I'm putting in more files and adding in essentially what are called these checkpoints. Now, what's nice about this is that when you are done, right, let's say we built it all the way out, I can now go back, again, starting at number 6, add other components in to create another version, and then what will happen is, if I hit this button right here, what it does is it actually, it's like it says, it activates that collection of components within that session. So what's nice about that at that point in time is that with Windchill 10.2, you now have that universal upload capabilities. What you could do is upload these onto your workspace and then do all your renaming functions, including the top-level assembly, and then make an entire new version of that assembly or iteration of that assembly or a new product, whatever you might be looking for. So it's a way to add components, take away components, try different branches of what that assembly may be without having to go through. And again, we all have to take into account our parent-child relationships, but it's just a good way to do that. Now, in a practical sense, let's see it actually work, okay? So we'll go here. I'll get all this stuff out of memory. Let's go ahead and shut all this stuff down. We don't want to save any of that. There we are. Okay, so I have here just some, again, simple stuff. For those of you that have been around a long while, you know all about the stuff that I'm going to put together. But essentially, this is my assembly. Again, this is just stuff from the intro class, right? We're going to put this back together, but we're going to create some different versions of it, and you're going to see how this works, okay? So what I'll do here is I'm going to say File New. We'll create an assembly file. We won't care too much about the name. And then from here, I'm going to get into File, and I'll say I want to start a new design exploration. Now, I actually did this from an established assembly and then went backwards, but I think it's kind of nice to see it from this point. So we'll just call it test assembly, or excuse me, test exploration. And by default, as soon as I start, essentially it saves that point in time essentially as what is called the entry checkpoint. Now, all I'm going to do here, right, is work in conjunction with this thing being open. So I'll come in and say, you know what, I want to assemble the body. We'll put it in the default spot. There's our default constraint. There it is. There we are. Now, if I want to save this as a point where I want to be able to go back to, all I have to do is double-click. I'll say this is the body. All right, there it is. And I now have my body as a checkpoint. So I'll go back and say, here's my active checkpoint before. Here's my body as my now active checkpoint. And at this point in time, I can now add components and then move back and forth, okay? So what I'll do here is assemble one more. I'll assemble the cover. Again, we'll just kind of drag it around, do some simple assembly objects. There it is. There we are. Let's say we will now, we might want to create a few different versions based off the body with different covers, which we'll do here in just a second. But I'll go ahead and again say, you know what, this is cover 1. There we are. And I now have that checkpoint. Now, from here, if I want to, I can come back in. I'll activate the body, and I'll go ahead. Notice how it goes away, right? There's our cover 1 that goes away. Let's put in our next cover. Here's our next cover. You'll see this. It'll be a little bit different color with the round on top. Nothing overly special about it. There we are, and I have this guy, okay? So now what you have here is that if I go ahead and double-click that guy, we'll say it's cover 2. There we are. And so now what I have is this guy, and I also have this guy. And let's say now that we wanted to save this as a different, assembly or whatever it may be, okay? So from here, I'll just say, you know what? Let me go ahead and check mark. This is where I want to be at. We're going to save the design exploration session because we haven't saved it yet. It just saves essentially your structure over here. There we are. At this point in time, this is what's in memory. I can save it this way. I can save as this way. I can check into PDM or not check in, but upload it to Workspace, give it new names within the PDM link environment, and work from there. So in its simplest form, there's a lot of other things. There's reports and all kinds of other stuff, and reports on what has and hasn't changed, and we really don't have time to get into that because I'm pretty much up at time right now. But that's what it means to go in and look at this design exploration extension. Again, there we are. We'll open the one that exists. There it is. Oh, sorry guys, I did forget about that. Let's erase it. Now let's open it up. There we are. All right, notice how it starts right back there. And again, if I wanted to, I can go right back to where I wanted with cover 1 and keep designing if I wanted to. So definitely some possibilities and some capabilities and some excitement around that. I think that's pretty cool. Want to dig into it more, get into some of these other properties and things and reports that you can assign and all that, but that'll be for a later date. Maybe we'll have a webcast specifically around the design exploration extension, okay? So we're right towards the end where we're going to kind of do some finishing stuff. We have about 10 minutes. We'll have question and answers, or if there are questions and answers, and then we'll do a quick little BWIR finish up. So Dan and Beth, questions that we have.
Yes, Ben, great job. Thank you so much for a quick run-through. There's so many new features, and I know we didn't get to some of the Unite stuff. We didn't get to many of the other things.
Yeah.
Take a moment, folks. Use the question panel on your GoToWebinar control panel to post questions to us, and we will take as many as we can in the next few minutes. A couple of comments. The TMZ file and the checkpoints, it's like, can we do that so I can go back to that one moment in high school where I wanted to change a few things? Wouldn't that be really nice?
Exactly.
So one other comment, Connect Press Creo community did a webinar with a similar title about a month ago with PTC. The recorded version of that is in Creo community. So some of these other features that Ben didn't have a chance to show, you might want to go back and pick some of those up in that webinar when you get a moment. If you're a member of the community, you can just log in and pull that, much the same way you'll be able to see the view on demand here. Ben, a couple of questions that have come up. First of all, John posted a notice about 5 minutes ago saying Creo 3.0 F000 was posted for download today.
Okay.
So I hadn't heard that yet, but thank you, John, for sharing that. Chris, drawing section view, do they follow shaded mode yet?
I probably have to get a little bit more detail exactly what he's talking about. With just
all right,
that one.
Chris, come back to us with more detail, and we'll revisit that.
Yeah.
Corey, in drawing, how do you put in center lines, toggle from hidden lines shown or not shown in a DWG?
So the functionality that has, well, at least from what let's just say this, I don't think the functionality has changed. I don't think I've dug into that yet. But center lines in drawings, the way that PTC looks at their drawings is that things come from the model. So usually center lines are products of axes that exist in the part itself. Creating a center line is no different than what you had before, at least in getting to dig into it. Maybe there has been an update, but in previous versions of software, you had to create a line and then right-click on it and change the style of that line. So again, I haven't dug into all of these things, but usually the idea is to bring a center line over from the part. and then show it within the drawing itself.
Got it. All right, Chris came back with a little more clarity. Drawing views that are sections have always been only wireframes, hidden, but regular view can be in shaded mode in a drawing. So going back to the original piece, do they follow the shaded mode yet?
Okay, so I will produce that real quick while we're going through some other questions. So if you have any more, I will.
Okay. If you could multitask that way. We have a question. Can you have both 2.0 and 3.0 installed in the same computer, or will 3.0 upgrade the 2.0?
No, you can have 2.0 and 3.0 installed on the same computer. Yes, you can.
Okay, and is there a way to check the IP address of the computer the part was developed on? This is somebody in an education mode where they've got lots of stations. They're trying to figure out who was modeling the original part.
That is possible. I don't know if it's an IP, but from what I can remember, and I think this has been around for a while, I think you do have the capabilities of finding what user or machine it came from. I don't think that's necessarily a Creo 3 function. I would have to find that. Honestly, you probably could find that on the PTC support website, but there is a report that you can do on parts to say it came from this specific machine. And I know exactly, if you're in the education, I know exactly what you're talking about. So if you follow up with a little bit of an email, I think we've got to get you some information on that.
Right, and when you get a moment, let's see this demo that you're doing, and then put up your email address again, then so folks can shoot you questions when they have. You ready for another one, or you want to show off what you're doing?
Go ahead. That's fine.
Design exploration add-on, is there an additional cost?
I am not for sure of that just yet. That is a unknown because, again, since we're so new on it, I do not know if design exploration is a paid add-on or not as of right now.
Okay, another user just typed in, yes, DEX is $5K, but I don't know that for sure. Okay. Question, how is the behavior of fastener extension in PDM link?
Good question. Again, since this is new and just released, guys, I wish I could answer that within PDM link. I know that you can put your extension or all those fasteners within PDM link, but true behavior, is it exactly like what you would expect, just regular parts and assemblies, is something that we will all have to explore as we're kind of going along here. So I do not know the answer to that just yet because we haven't tried to.
Yeah, but thanks, audience. There's a couple of really good questions that we should all try to track down over the next few weeks and share with each other. Here's one from Cosma. When using the fasteners auto-create, will it create new parts with new names? What happens when you have the fasteners already in your database?
And obviously that is a PDM question.
Yeah.
Again, I can't answer that. I can't answer that just yet, guys. So
yeah.
We'll have to see how that plays. Yeah, if you have a lot of fasteners that are already in your database, that'll be something that we'll have to dig into when that happens. So honestly, guys, I can't answer that just yet.
Yeah.
And then
all right, take a moment.
Yeah. And then here's here's that view. So you cannot turn on. It doesn't look like it will turn on the shading within the within that section view. So hopefully that answers your question, bud.
Okay. All right. So let me just see if anything else that's popped up that's sort of more generic than very. We have a couple of questions that are very specific, and Ben and Beth, your team may want to follow up with some of these folks who have some very much more specific piece. Does 3.0 require a new license file?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
And there's a couple of questions which, we didn't get to, and again, I might encourage you to go back to the other webinar we ran a few weeks ago, which is, what are we doing with both a combination of direct modeling tools and the ability to read native CAD files? And so you didn't touch on that. I might just make a comment that part of the hoopla, I think, around 3.0 is a further integration of some direct modeling issues directly into Creo. That's been an ongoing merge from acquisition many years ago, and running the balance between direct modeling and more traditional parametric modeling and making them work in the same environment. So I think you'll be very, very pleased to see some of those improvements. And then what I've seen so far in terms of the ability to natively read and or write back files from other formats, that's a huge change in development in this release. You know, that's worth its own whole webinar at some point, I think, in terms of showing how you can begin to manage far-flung pieces or disparate divisions that are using other brands without having to own native seats or expertise in some of those areas.
Yes. Yep.
So, great. There are the contact info. We'll leave that up for a while. Ben, Beth, would you like to say some closing remarks?
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, Ben, if you could trail back to the wrap-up slide, and we can just go from there and just close this out. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I think there are a lot of new, exciting enhancements, especially within a multi-CAD environment and uniting technology. So, very good stuff, Ben. You did a great job. I just want to let everyone know that we do archive all of our webinars on our website, so you can check us out at bwirptc.com to view this recording later, and then we have a whole archive filled with different Creo and Windchill webinars for you, so be sure to check us out there. You can also sign up on our website at bwirptc.com to receive an early email alert on when Creo 3.0 is released. I have a feeling it's either today or going to be this week, so I know that's right around the corner. Next slide, Ben. Also wanted to give a quick mention to our training facilities that we have at BWIR. If you're looking for Creo or Windchill training, we provide certified PTC instructor-led training on-site in 8 training locations, with our newest in Portland, Oregon. We can also provide off-site and virtual training to fit your organization's needs. You can view our course schedule by city on our website, and you can also reach out to our national training manager. His name's Jason Hardebeck. He'll be able to help you out and get you set up with that. And I think that's all I have from my end. If you feel free to engage with us directly if you're looking for just general inquiries. You can reach out to me. I can get you in touch with a specialist. If you have any questions, technical inquiries, you can shoot Ben an email or give him a call to follow up with this presentation. And again, I just want to thank everyone for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everybody, for getting on. And I think look forward. Hopefully, we'll have some more stuff in the future, and look forward to giving everybody good, relevant information.
Right. Great job, BWIR team. Thank you so much, and thank yous to the folks in the Connect Press team as well behind the scenes for gathering and promoting and helping folks register. Rita Stang and John Myers and Jill Jerbeck and Charlie Fielding at Connect Press. On behalf of the Connect Press communities, especially CreoCommunity.com, thanks for attending today. You'll hear from me as soon as practical with the links for review on demand. And with that, I'll bid everybody a good day and say goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.